Hey there, and welcome to the studio. For this explainer, I want you to step right into the shoes of my newest apprentice, so consider this your official day one on set. We're here today to fundamentally master visual control. You see, a lot of beginners, they kind of think product photography is just about pointing a camera at objects and taking pretty pictures. But honestly, it's not. It's actually about engineering a complete visual environment. By the time we wrap up today, you're going to have a crystal clear mental model of how backdrops literally shape product photos. That way, you can choose or even build surfaces that genuinely support your product rather than distracting from it.
Okay, let's jump straight into our golden rule immediately. A good backdrop is not decoration, it is structure. I really need you to internalize this before we even think about touching a camera. The backdrop is doing all this invisible work in your frame. It's this quiet, underlying system that instantly tells your viewer whether the product feels premium or handmade, playful, super clean, or just totally confusing. Believe me, a backdrop can make a cheap product feel incredibly deliberate, or it can take a beautifully crafted product and make it feel like a messy afterthought. When it clicks for you that the backdrop is structure, you stop asking yourself, what looks nice? And you start asking, okay, what is actually doing the work here?
All right, part one, the backdrop as a visual stage.
Think of your product as our lead actor. Now, the backdrop isn't just some decorative poster hanging behind them, right? It is the actual stage floor. It's the curtains. It's the lighting plane that sets the ground rules for the entire scene. Just notice how the exact same object, something as simple as a smartphone, completely changes its meaning based entirely on the field of attention around it. You put it on a cluttered table, and your eye just doesn't know where to rest. The whole setting is screaming, look at everything at once. But if you take that identical phone and drop it on a clean, minimal desk, the setting instantly shifts to, hey, look right at this product. A viewer never actually sees a product in isolation. Their eyes are constantly, subconsciously comparing it to what's under it, what's behind it, and all the empty space surrounding it.
And you know that constant comparison happening in the viewer's brain? That brings us to the absolute engine of product photography, contrast. Contrast is, at its core, just difference. Difference in light, color, texture, size, or the sharpness of an edge. Without that visual separation, your product and your background just kind of melt together into one big blob. Your viewer's eye is forced to play a guessing game about where the product actually ends and the background begins. It's exactly like trying to read words written in gray ink on a light gray piece of paper. The words are technically there, sure, but the clarity just completely drops off. The exact same thing happens on set when your backdrop lacks contrast with your product.
Now you can use these relationships basically like a studio cheat sheet to instantly dial in your readability. Need a bright, light product to feel super bold and prominent? Drop it right onto a dark backdrop to crank up that separation. Got a really busy, visually complex product? Pair it with a simple backdrop to dial down the confusion. As an apprentice, this is your primary toolkit. The backdrop's job isn't to be a superstar on its own. Its job is to create these specific relationships so the product can completely shine.
But hey, contrast isn't just about light and dark, right? It's also about texture. And man, texture is so underrated. Think of texture like the tone of voice in a conversation. The words themselves might stay exactly the same, but the tone completely changes how you receive the message. A rough, gritty texture quietly sends this earthy, handmade vibe. Meanwhile, a flawlessly smooth texture suggests something modern, precise, maybe even clinical. And all this happens before the viewer even consciously realizes it, because our brains automatically connect visual texture to a physical experience. We're literally imagining what it feels like to touch it.
And seeing how this scale works really illustrates the risks you run when you're building a set. You always have to imagine your texture at photo scale, not just how it feels in your own hand. A very fine texture is beautifully clean, sure, but it might just disappear entirely on camera. On the flip side, a large or grainy texture feels incredibly rustic and expressive, but the huge risk there is that it completely overpowers your product. Texture only really works when it creates an atmosphere without accidentally hijacking the photo and becoming the main subject itself.
So how do we stop the backdrop from completely stealing the show? We do it through coherence. A good stage doesn't try to outshine the lead actor, it just helps the actor make sense in the scene. As you're setting up your shots, I want you aiming for these three matches. First up, a material match. Does a high-end luxury watch really belong on a rough, beaten-up piece of casual cardboard? Probably not. Second, a mood match. Does the surface actually support the emotion we want the buyer to feel? And third, an attention match. Does the backdrop physically give the product enough visual room to be clearly seen? When all three of these line up, your photo feels 100% intentional.
Speaking of giving the product room to breathe, we really need to tackle a huge beginner mindset issue right now. Empty space is not empty. It is actively doing crucial work. Think about a crowded room. If literally everyone is talking at once, the message is totally lost, right? But if that room has enough silence, the one important voice can be heard loud and clear. Well, blank areas in your frame provide that exact visual silence. They give the eye a safe place to rest and help the product feel important, rather than feeling like it's fighting for its life in a crowded space. Minimal backdrops aren't just empty by accident, they are empty on purpose.
Moving right along to Section 2, How Materials Control Light.
See, a backdrop is a physical material system, which means it interacts directly with your studio lights. Picking materials in product photography isn't just about picking a cute visual style. Let's compare these two material behaviors side by side. A matte surface, that gives you a very soft, diffuse reflection. It creates a calm, minimal, highly forgiving environment. It quietly takes a step back. But a glossy surface, on the other hand, creates these strong, sharp reflections and highly visible highlights. It's dramatic, it's slick, it aggressively waves its hands and calls attention to itself. So if your product is delicate and has a ton of intricate detail, a glossy backdrop might just add way too much visual noise. You literally have to tell your camera how to behave by choosing materials that bounce light exactly the way you want them to.
As my apprentice, I want you using this exact concept as your personal quality assurance checklist before your finger ever even touches the shutter button. The very best backdrop is the one that puts up the least amount of argument. It shouldn't force your viewer to negotiate with distracting reflections or awkward, jagged edges or just weirdly mismatched textures. A fully resolved backdrop simply looks at the viewer and says, "Hey, this is the right place for this product. Nothing here needs explaining. Just let your eyes stay right here on the product."
All right, let's put this into practice. Section 3, the Karachi Candle Test.
It's time for your first real-world studio test. Imagine we've just been hired to photograph this beautifully handmade candle for a lovely little online store based over in Karachi. The candle itself is super simple, very natural, and the entire brand is built around feeling calming and intimate. So we walk into our prop room, and we essentially have two distinct choices for this shoot. On one hand, we have a shiny decorative sheet with an intricate repeating pattern. On the other, we have a very simple, earthy, soft matte board. Which one are you grabbing for this candle setup?
Okay, drum roll, the soft matte board wins, and honestly, it wins by a landslide. But why? Because the camera does not reward complexity, it rewards clarity. That shiny decorative sheet, yeah, it might look really pretty holding it in your hands in the room, but the second it's on camera, it immediately starts competing with the candle. It makes the whole scene feel overly staged and loud. The matte board, though, provides that essential visual quietness we talked about. Its total lack of shine keeps the viewer's attention rock steady, which makes the candle's calming, intimate message infinitely easier to read in a split second.
Finally, Section 4, Thinking Like a Pro.
Look at that. I can tell your eye has officially changed today. You've graduated from a decorator who just guesses at what looks nice to a system designer who actively controls light, space, and meaning. You aren't just casually placing stuff behind objects anymore, you're engineering full environments. So here are your 4 operational steps to build that structure every single time you walk onto the set. 1. Always prioritize clarity and visual separation. 2. Choose support over mere decoration. 3. Build your mood through the actual physics of your materials. Remember, matte versus glossy. And 4. Ensure absolute coherence so your frame has less argument and 0 mixed signals.
I want to leave you with this ultimate guiding star question for the rest of your apprenticeship. Whenever you're handed a brand new item to shoot, do not ask, "What background should I use?" That is the old way of thinking. Instead, I want you to look at the object and ask yourself, what visual environment helps this product be understood? Take that question, head out onto the studio floor, and I absolutely cannot wait to see what kind of stage you build for your very next set.